Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into the Habs prospect pool. I recently ranked the top 10 prospect pools in the NHL on my podcast On the Clock with the Prospect Don, and turns out we agreed that the Habs have a top 3, maybe top 5 prospect pool in the entire NHL, so that's looking really good. But if you look at the prospect pool itself through the lens of a rebuild and attach it to the core of players at the NHL level, which makes so much more sense in my opinion, then the Habs might just have one of the best rebuilds in the entire NHL, and that's a subject for another day in the not too distant future. What I like about the Habs prospect pool though is how diversified it is. I think there's a glaring weakness, which we will be talking about a little bit later, but there's a little bit of everything from high risk, high reward players to players with more certainty but lower ceilings, or from small dynamic players to big bodied players with physicality and some skills. But anyways, take the time to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want more of that, and let's dive in. First, I have all of Montreal's prospect ranked and everything, but we can't possibly go over 30 something of them in a video and keep it reasonable, so we're gonna keep it at a top 12, but I've got you covered. We'll talk about most of them, just that we'll go quickly over some of them. There are some players that I really don't see an NHL future for them. Players like Koivu, Bergqvist, Eriksson, McNeil, Maxon Vig. I think they are just a little bit too far to make it to the NHL. There is also some prospect that I don't have in my top 25 and that maybe have a chance to play, but I doubt it will be with this organization. And those players are players like William Trudeau and Philippe Méchard. If they find a way to make it to the NHL, I don't see how they play in Montreal. Overall, this prospect pool is overflowing with depth, and all of the following players have a chance to play NHL games, whether it's with the Habs or not, it will depend, but players like Luke Mittelstadt, who apparently the organization loves, who's a smaller left shot D with weak production, but who can really defend, retrieve pucks in the corners, and break it out cleanly while keeping it simple. Also players like Logan Sawyer, who's a hard-working winger with decent frame and a plus-level vision, but the skating is a little bit rough and he lacks the creativity and puck skills to really make it. And others like Vincent Roher, Carlos Handel, Sam Harris, they all have a little something in their game. Roher is a hard-working forward. Harris is physical with a good shot. Handel has good skating, vision, and ideas, but Roher doesn't have much else outside of the hard-working mentality. Harris isn't an NHL caliber skater, and Handel doesn't have the puck skills to execute his ideas, and his execution needs a little bit more pace. I also have players like Yevgeny Volokhin and Arsen Radkov in this category, but that's mostly due to my lack of capabilities to sit down and watch game focusing on goalies. I think life is too short for that, but I think they both have a chance to make it. Next, it's the category of players that I would say have a decent chance to play, but with limited upside, mixed with some players with higher upside, but limited chance to make it. Players like Jared Davidson and Bogdan Konushkov have a pretty decent chance to make it, but how high is their actual ceiling is the real question. Another one like Bryce Pickford could make it in a more significant way if he reaches the NHL. Obviously, there's no guarantee, but he does have offensive tools that stands out, which isn't necessarily the norm in this category. And last, there's our big physical players with some skills like Tyler Thorpe, Florian Jacki, and Owen Protz, all players destined to play on the fourth line or the bottom pair that can bring significant physicality, but also can either shoot the puck or move the puck. So this is where we get into the meat of the video and start that top 12. And we start with no one else than Jakub Dobes. He only played 16 games last season, so he still counts as a rookie. I think overall, while Dobes isn't the most technical goalie out there, he did well enough in the NHL. Some good stretches and some less good stretches. Finding consistency will be key for him, but he's big, he's athletic, and he moves well. Even if he does push himself out of position multiple times per game, it's just about getting reps. I'm not a goalie expert, but I don't think he has starter potential, at least not for a team that's looking to be a contender, but a backup or a 1B is definitely in the realm of possibilities for him. Next at 11, I got Oliver Kapanen. I know there's many people higher than me on him and some even way higher than me. If I'm not mistaken, Grant McCagg even said something like not rule him out for the 2C position for the Habs next season, which personally I don't see it, but I've been wrong many times before, so it definitely could happen. Kapanen is not likely to see, in my opinion. I think he's more a third line center or maybe even a fourth line center in the NHL. It will depend if he has the vision and the sense to create space for him to unleash his shot, which is above average in my opinion. But also if he can take a step in his explosion. He's not a bad skater or a slow skater at top speed, but he's also not creating separation or using speed differentials to open gaps between him and the defense, which can really limit his ability to make plays and open up time for his shot. He's a solid player defensively, good support, good stick. He has decent size and he's decently strong, but he barely won 40% of his puck battles in the AHL. The production in the SHL is looking good at almost a point per game, but the limited playmaking and everything else makes me think he's a little bit more in the mold of a Lars Eller or something around that. Next, at number 10, I have the enigmatic Joshua Roy. Is he going to make his place in this organization or another? I'm not so sure about it anymore, but I think he plays because Joshua Roy is hella talented and smart. I think he has the tools to be a third-line scoring winger, but he's got to want it more. He's got to show that he's willing to work hard. It's obvious that he has the talent, the vision to see the plays happening, and the shot to play in the NHL. But while he's never going to be a hard-for-checking winger or an intense player, he has to play with more urgency in his play. The skating will always be a limiting factor, but in his first stint in the NHL, it didn't show that much. He made quick plays, quick reads, made himself available for passes, but when he came back up last season, he was as vanilla as it gets without any of the pop that he can have as an offensive support player. There's a very natural comp for him in the NHL in Tyler Toffoli. I'm not saying that he will score just as much, but the toolkit is very similar. It's on Joshua Roy to actually make it work. I still believe he can work it out. He's still just 21 years old, but let's just say that he won't crack my top 10 next year if he hasn't solidified his spot in the NHL. And at number 9, I have the first surprise of this video, and I have LG Mooney. LG Mooney might be a tiny player, but if there's one player in that format to place a bet on, I think it's Mooney. He's not a normal 5'8" or 5'7" player. He's the playmaking version of Logan Stankoven. The Stankoven with some Braden Point in it. Just to make sure you guys understand though, I'm not saying that Mooney will be Braden Point. I'm saying that the fully realized version of Mooney is something of a cross between Stankoven and Braden Point. He's got everything but the size. He's a high-end to elite skater, high-end handler, high-end vision, never-stopping motor, relentless, physical, good shot, elite creativity with the puck. There's just so much going for him. Obviously, the path to the NHL will be tough, and some part of his game will need to become more NHL style. Like, he's creative, but sometimes it's just too much, and he'll need to tone it down and play within a certain structure. The same way that he's a physical player, but he's going to have to learn to play through contacts. For some reason, I'm not worried about it at all. Just like this season at the US NTDP isn't worrisome to me because once he was placed with better player who could actually follow him at the U18s, he was a dynamic offensive driver and creator. He controlled play and he was a constant threat in the offensive zone. I'm really hyped for him. I think he's a diamond in the rough. Next in the pipeline at number 8, I have Owen Beck, and Beck is the complete opposite of LG Mooney. He's not a skilled player or a dynamic creator by any means whatsoever. He plays hard, he plays fast, he attacks the net, and he's even got some physicality to his game. Highly translatable type of game to the NHL. If he plays in the NHL the same way that he plays in the AHL, he's an NHL player all day. My questions are more about the ceilings. He could be anything from a fourth line center a la Jake Evans, just like he could be like the Timu version of Anthony Cirelli. He's had good but not great first pro season and was completely impactless in the dozen game that he played in the NHL. Nothing great to report, but also nothing bad to report. It's going to take some time. Personally, I think he's a 3C. Some think he's a fourth line player, and some think he could be a little bit more than that too. I think he's going to play on the PK and that he could become a matchup center who can also chip in with some offense, but I wouldn't expect more than 35 points or maybe 45 points in his prime years. He doesn't seem to have that offensive flair, but still a very useful player, a player that a team can count on difficult situations, and he's not my favorite for the 3C spot no more, and that spot belonged to the number 7 on this list, which is Aiden Papanicus. Papanicus is this new 6'5" center who can skate really well, not just for his size though, but all together. He has details in his game, he has looked great defensively, he's physical, he works really hard. The production in the WHL isn't all that enticing, but I promise that he looks way better than that on the ice than what his production would suggest. There's even nights where he looked like he was driving the bus offensively. I'm not saying that this will be his game at the NHL level, because it will not, but the skating, the hands, the shot, the passing skills, the vision, and the hockey sense, they all look good. And if you add his size, his physicality, and his defensive details, and you got the making of a possible dominant future third line C, a bit like what Adam Laurie is to Winnipeg. We might not have a sure shot 2C option for the future, but between Papanicus and Beck and Kapanen, one is probably going to make it for the future 3C position. But again, they're all right shots, so the left side of the ice remains a question mark for future faceoffs. Next, at number 6, and the first defenseman in the top 12, we have Adam Angstrom, a left-shot defenseman who stands at 6'2" and is slowly getting better. I wasn't so sure where he was going to go after the mediocre playoff in the SHL in 2024, and as a matter of fact, the beginning of the season started a little bit like on the same foot as the playoff the year before, a bit shaky defensively, not so great decision-making, especially on the breakout where he took just too much risk for absolutely no reasons, but months after months and games after games, he got better and better. It's obvious that his skating is a huge advantage. He's extremely fluid and fast. His stride is effortless and is clearly going to be an asset at the NHL level. He can escape from the forecheck easily, giving himself some space and some time to execute a clean breakout. He cleaned up his decision making and he can read the options quicker. He can absolutely fly in transition. He can pinch and recover. He can move on the blue line. He can activate down the offensive zone. I'm not sure he's going to put a lot of points on the board at the NHL level. I don't think it translates all that well, and he actually never was a big point producer, but I can see him become a number 4 or a solid third pair D in the mold of a Jonas Brodin or something like that. And at number 5, I got the newly acquired Alexander Zharovsky. I just made an entire video on him, so I won't be spending too much time on him, but to put it simply, he's very good. And the step that he took in his skating last season is vastly underrated in my opinion. The road to the NHL might take a little while with him. There's a lot of refinement needed, but the KHL playoffs were very encouraging to say the least. His puck skills are by far his dominant skill. He can handle the puck with the best of the 2025 NHL draft, but the rest of the skill set is closer to average, with the skating still lagging a little bit behind. He's very light and should get stronger, so I expect most facet of his game to take a step because of the physical runway, but overall he's got top 6 upside if it all goes well, and he plays a game similar to a guy like Kent Johnson. Obviously, he's multiple steps behind in his development. Johnson was a top 5 pick, but the game is very similar. Next, at number 4, we got the only possible savior of our center line, and that is Michael Hage. And that is the only hole I can see in this entire prospect pool or rebuild. It's the lack of a sure shot 2C to play behind Suzuki. Hage is talented, but he plays a little bit more like a winger. He loves to use his skating to fly through the neutral zone with the puck and try to beat defenders wide. His faceoff are also just okay at 45%. He's not always supporting his defense, and I can't say that he reads the play all that well defensively or that he's strong or has an active stick. He doesn't win the majority of his battles for the puck, and he's also not the most accurate passer, basically 18th on his team for pass accuracy, which is not so great. This doesn't sound all that positive, but out of all the forwards not named Demidov in this pool, he's probably the one with the highest ceiling. But for now, he's mostly just effective, or at least he's at his best on the rush with speed differentials. When there isn't one, he can use just a few crossover patterns to create space and cut back or cut to the inside. I wouldn't say he's the most inside-driven player. He took a lot of outside shots and low percentage shot, but most of his goals are within a few feet of the net. That should tell him where he's been the most effective, but overall, he's got good speed, good hands, good ideas. He's a decent passer with decent shot, but he needs to add details to his game. He needs to get stronger and expand his game a little bit offensively. There's certainly a top 6 upside here as a Jordan Kyrou type of player on the wing, or an Elias Lindholm player down the middle if he keeps improving on the defensive side of the puck. He's an interesting one because he's not a sure shot to be that player, but we absolutely need him to be that player if Dak doesn't pan out. Personally, I'd give him like a 70% chance to make it, but that number means absolutely nothing. And here at number 3, it could have been either Reinbacher or Jakub Fowler, but I decided to go with Fowler. I really like him, and I think he's definitely one of our best prospects. But goalies being goalies, and the pressure put on this guy to become the next number 1 goalie for this organization made me put him at number 3, even if I had a second earlier in the year. There's no denying what he's done in the NCAA. His stats are somewhere at the top of the league over the last 25 years. And even when he jumped to the AHL, he did mostly well. Obviously, it's a jump, and being asked to start games in the playoff after only 3 games of experience can play with the confidence of the guy, but overall, he looks solid with some less solid games here and there. He has plenty of time to develop in the AHL before making the jump. This is just his draft plus 3 that he's starting, and the team still has Montembeault signed for 2 more years. Personally, I'd take it slow, let him acclimatize to the pro game and iron out some of his flaws. I think he has NHL starter written all over him, and one of the goalies being compared to the most is a guy like Jordan Bennington. And while I agree with the aggressive, athletic, fiery game comparison, I see him more as a Jonathan Quick type of goalie, not the most fluid skater out there, but positioning, IQ, instinct, athleticism with a knack for the crazy battle fly style clutch save is reminiscent to a Jonathan Quick for me. And at number 2, we got the one and only David Reinbacher. It feels like he was drafted forever ago, but to this day, no one knows his actual ceiling, at least not offensively, because when he's not playing on a terrible team, changing the entire coaching staff 3 times in a season, well, he's not playing at all because he's got knee ligaments made out of, I don't know, Play-Doh or something. It's clear that when they drafted him, he already had a mature game defensively, not overwhelmingly physical, but also not easy to play against. Just a guy that takes all the space and all the time available away in an instant. Whether it's closing the gaps against the rush or defending the cycle, defending will be what carries him to the NHL. He also has a very solid breakout game. I wouldn't call him dynamic by any means, but he's very efficient. He's a guy that keeps things simple, cleanly moves the puck, but he's not trying to find the best plays out there or shake for checkers to give himself some time. But a more dynamic part of his game could be coming if he actually gets to play on a consistent basis. He seems to have the hockey sense and the skating to do more, jump in more plays, wait a little bit more to find the better plays, activate a little bit more from the blue line in. There's just more to him, but he needs to play to develop. The good news is that whenever he played outside of Cloton, he looked solid and sometimes even the best player on the ice in the AHL. Did he look like what a 5th overall pick should look like? Absolutely not, but with his size, his very good mobility, and his intelligence, he's as sure a top 4 D as you can get. He doesn't strike me as a first pair D or anything like that as a player, but because he will most likely be called to insulate Hutson in the future, I think he will play first pair minute. While he has the ability to move the puck efficiently himself, life will be made much easier, especially when you're playing with a guy of Hutson's caliber. He'll play tough minutes and collect some points, but most of the offense and the breakout work will be coming from Hutson. At his ceiling, I think he's a number 2 a la Matthias Ekholm, a guy with size, smooth skating, and two-way abilities, but the more likely scenario is probably more like of a mix of a Hampus Lindholm and Adam Larsson. Big, smooth skating, two-way Ds with a defense-first approach, but still not quite top of the lineup type of player. And at number 1, and I'm sure you've seen this one coming from a mile away, we've got Ivan Demidov. Anyone who watched his KHL season last year knows what's coming. We even got a glimpse of it in the last 2 games of the season in the playoff. The debut in the NHL was explosive to say the least, with a beautiful pass to Newhook in the slot, eluding the entire defense and opening the space for Newhook to shoot from the bumper, and a crazy goal on a setup dump in where he faked the shot, pulled the puck to his backhand on retrieval, and basically just what a show it was. And then it calmed down a little bit for the next few games and in the playoff, which is to be expected, but the hands, the hockey sense, the patience, and the vision were all on display. He was always the second best player behind Celebrini in his draft year, and it's hard to think of a player who could have an impact on the game like he will have outside of, again, Celebrini. To me, he's still the best prospect outside of the NHL. I prefer him over Misa. I even prefer him over Schaefer, which is not an opinion that everybody shares. After watching basically the entirety of last season, I would probably change my comp that I always had for him. I always saw him as a Kaprizov type of player without the elite speed, but while Demidov attacks the middle of the ice relentlessly, he doesn't have that power through anything type of mentality that Kaprizov has. He's more cerebral and more tactical in the way that he tries to open space and create offense. And if you mix that with his puck skills and his skating agility, I think he's closer to a Patrick Kane type of player than a Kaprizov type of player. Now, obviously, Kane is one of the best, if not the best playmaker of his time. So I'm not saying to expect that out of Demidov, but a 100-point season in his prime while being one of the best winger in the entire NHL is probably not out of reach, even though I wouldn't say it's likely. So that is it for the prospect pool. This thing is deep, and at the top of it, we got a star in the making. Overall, it's probably a top 5, maybe even top 3 prospect pool in the entire NHL because of Demidov at the top and because of its depth. Plus, the team is already in the conversation for playoffs, so the rebuild is very well underway. Hope you guys enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.